They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but when it comes to a woman who secretly loves you, they're more like the pages of a book she's afraid to hand you, so she lets you catch glimpses instead. You see, human beings can train themselves to hide words, to mask their tone, to construct sentences that mislead. But the eyes, they are terrible liars. They reveal longing before the mind can intercept it. When she secretly loves you, there's a different quality in the way she looks at you. It's not just about holding eye contact. It's about the pauses in between, the way her gaze sometimes lingers like she's searching for something familiar, something safe in your face. She might look at you when you're not paying attention, and the moment you turn toward her, she'll glance away too quickly, like she's been caught trespassing in a private garden of her own feelings. These micro moments, the subtle flickers of vulnerability, are telling. And they're telling because they are involuntary. Psychology shows us that pupil dilation, for instance, can be a direct reaction to attraction, even if the person consciously tries to remain composed. The warmth in her eyes, the way they soften when you speak, the almost imperceptible spark when you enter the room, these are the silent admissions her lips will not make. There's also the difference between how she looks at you and how she looks at others. She might scan the faces of strangers, glance at friends casually. But with you, it's different. Her gaze lingers like she's memorizing you, as though every feature matters. She's storing pieces of you away, not because she plans to use them, but because you matter enough to be remembered without effort. Some men miss this entirely because they're looking for grand gestures, public declarations, unmistakable flirting, bold confessions. But a woman who can't tell you she loves you will rarely play her cards that openly. Instead, her truth slips out through the eyes, at the moment you make her laugh unexpectedly, or when you're focused on something and she feels safe enough to admire you without risk. But here's the deeper layer. The eyes don't just reveal desire, they also reveal restraint. Sometimes, you'll see her look at you like she wants to say something, then immediately pull it back. That little half-second of hesitation, that's her heart arguing with her fear. And that's where the real story is. If you notice it, don't just brush it aside. It's not about calling her out or forcing her into a confession. And it's about understanding that love, when unspoken, often has more weight than love declared. Her silence might not mean absence of feeling. It might mean the opposite, that her feelings are so deep they terrify her. So pay attention to what her eyes are doing when her words are saying nothing. Because sometimes the most powerful messages are the ones she's trying hardest not to send. And if you catch them, if you really see her, then you're already holding the truth she's afraid to give. One of the clearest yet most misunderstood signs that a woman secretly loves you, but can't say it, is how deeply she invests in the small details of your life. Most people will listen to you, nod politely, and then move on. But when she's quietly in love, she doesn't just hear your words, she stores them. She remembers the way you take your coffee, that story you told months ago about your childhood dog, or that random snack you said you liked once in passing. She doesn't just keep these details in her mind, she uses them to make you feel seen without ever having to state her feelings outright. Why? Because for her, love lives in the small things. It's too risky to say, "I love you," but it feels safe to express that love through attentiveness, through the subtle art of making you feel known. It's her way of speaking a language that doesn't require permission. Every remembered fact, every thoughtful gesture is a silent sentence in the story she's been writing about you in her heart. Psychologically, this comes from the fact that emotional investment tends to heighten memory retention. We remember what matters to us. If you are important to her, you become a constant point of focus. Her mind naturally collects details about you without conscious effort. This isn't just affection, it's an involuntary prioritization. You've become part of her mental landscape, and so her brain treats your stories, habits, and preferences as things worth archiving. And this attentiveness often shows itself in ways you might overlook. She may casually reference something you forgot you told her, or she might anticipate your needs without you ever expressing them. She might send you a link to something related to your hobby or show up with your favorite drink on a stressful day. To her, these moments aren't grand gestures. They're quiet, everyday offerings. But make no mistake, they are deeply intentional. It's also important to notice the difference between friendly attentiveness and this deeper form of investment. Friends can care, yes, but when a woman secretly loves you, the level of consistency is unmatched. She doesn't just remember occasionally. She notices and remembers almost everything. Even your moods don't escape her. She can tell when something's off just by the way you respond to a simple "How are you?" She pays attention to the silences between your words, the sighs you try to hide, the little signs of stress you think no one notices. The beauty and the tragedy of this sign is that it's both revealing and concealing at the same time. It reveals her feelings through her actions, but it also conceals them because she can frame everything as simple kindness or friendship. Unless you're paying attention, you may never realize the depth behind her attentiveness. And here's the truth. Love that cannot be spoken often tries to prove itself instead. If you find that she remembers the little things you thought were throwaway comments, if she shows up in ways that no one else does, understand this. It's not an accident. It's her way of loving you from the shadows, hoping you notice without her having to risk saying the words aloud. Because sometimes the smallest gestures are the loudest confessions, if you're willing to hear them. Another sign that a woman secretly loves you but can't tell you is the way her energy shifts when you're around. It's subtle, almost imperceptible if you're not tuned in, but it's there. People can fake words, they can hide intentions, but they can't fully disguise the way their body reacts to someone who matters deeply to them. Her eyes linger just a second longer than necessary. Her posture adjusts to face you even in a crowded room. Her voice softens without her realizing it. It's an unconscious alignment of presence. Her attention magnetizes toward you as if drawn by something she can't control. You see, attraction isn't always loud. In fact, the most genuine form of it is often quiet, and it shows up in the spaces between actions. She might not touch you often, but when she does, it lingers in your memory because it's charged with something deeper. She might lean in just a bit when you speak, not out of habit, but because she wants to feel closer to you without crossing the invisible boundary she's afraid to break. These micro signals aren't deliberate tactics. They're reflexes born from affection she's trying to suppress. From a psychological perspective, this happens because emotions influence nonverbal behavior far more than people realize. The limbic system, the part of the brain tied to emotional responses, affects physical reactions before conscious thought can filter them. That means her body might confess feelings she's working hard to keep private. Even if she's careful with her words, the way she gravitates toward you when you enter the room, the warmth in her smile, or the extra spark in her laughter when you're the one making the joke. These are her emotions breaking through the cracks. And here's what makes it more telling. This shift in energy doesn't happen with everyone. You may notice she's polite and pleasant around others, but with you, she's fully engaged, as if the rest of the environment fades into the background. You feel her attention like a beam of light, direct, steady, and more intense than she probably intends. This is not coincidence. It's the subconscious prioritization of someone who holds an emotional stake in her heart. Yet, because she can't or won't say it outright, she lets herself express it in fleeting, deniable moments. She can always explain them away as friendliness, and you might even doubt yourself, wondering if you're imagining it. But love that's hidden doesn't disappear. it transforms. In her case, it transforms into warmth attentiveness, and that barely, their gravitational pull you can't quite name. The danger is that you might dismiss it entirely, thinking it's just her being nice. But if you're paying close attention, you'll see that niceness doesn't explain the way her eyes find yours more often than they should, or why her laughter comes quicker with you than with anyone else. That's not politeness. That's presence. And presence, when it's this consistent, is rarely accidental. It's the quiet choreography of a heart that wants to move closer but is afraid to be seen. So, if you ever notice someone's energy change in your presence, if the air feels charged in ways you can't explain, don't ignore it. Sometimes, what the mouth refuses to say, the body says without permission. And those silent confessions are often the truest of all. Another sign that a woman secretly loves you but can't tell you is the way she remembers the smallest details about you, things you may have even forgotten you mentioned. It's not just that she listens, it's that she stores pieces of your life in her mind like precious keepsakes. You might casually talk about a favorite childhood snack, an old dream you had, or the name of a pet you had years ago. Weeks, months, even years later, she'll bring it up. Not because it was important to her at the time, but because you were important to her at the time. This isn't the kind of attention people give to everyone. In the business of life, most conversations fade quickly from memory. We retain what matters to us, and if she's holding on to details about you, it's because you matter. In psychology, this is tied to something called selective attention. Our minds naturally filter the overwhelming amount of information we receive every day, prioritizing what we find meaningful. When you mean something to her, you rise to the top of that filter. The world may bombard her with noise, but the sound of your voice, your stories, your preferences, those cut through like a clear melody she can't forget. And it's not just remembering, it's the way she acts on what she remembers. Maybe she surprises you with something you once said you liked, without fanfare or announcement. Maybe she checks in on a problem you mentioned in passing weeks ago, as if she's been quietly rooting for you behind the scenes. These are small acts, but they carry the weight of someone who pays attention because her feelings make your happiness a priority in her mind. There's a quiet beauty in this. She doesn't need to declare her emotions outright because her care leaks into these moments. Every remembered fact is a breadcrumb leading back to the truth she's not ready to speak. In some cases, she might even downplay it, pretending it's just coincidence or saying she just happened to remember. But you'll know, if you look closely, to that no one just happens to remember the way you take your coffee or the exact date of an event you thought was insignificant. The irony is that this kind of love is often invisible to the untrained eye. Because it's not loud or performative, it can be easy to miss. But when you realize the depth of intention behind it, you see it for what it really is: love disguised as attentiveness, affection wrapped in memory. We often think love is proven in grand gestures, but more often it's proven in the quiet discipline of noticing. It's proven when someone chooses to remember the parts of you the rest of the world forgets. So, when you see someone consistently holding onto the little things you say and do, don't dismiss it as chance. It may very well be her heart's way of saying, "You matter to me more than you know," even if her lips never form the words. And sometimes, those unsaid words are the ones you'll feel the loudest. Another powerful sign that a woman secretly loves you, but can't bring herself to say it, is the way her energy shifts when you're around. You might not even notice it consciously at first, but there's a subtle change, a softening of her tone, a certain brightness in her eyes, a body language that becomes more open, almost unconsciously inviting. Human behavior is deeply rooted in instinct. Our emotions have a way of showing themselves in physical cues, even when our words remain guarded. In her presence with others, she might be composed, reserved, or even serious. But with you, something changes. She might laugh more easily, lean in closer when you speak, or mirror your posture without realizing she's doing it. Psychologists call this nonverbal synchrony, a natural mirroring that occurs when we feel emotionally connected to someone. It's as if her body speaks a language her mind is too shy to translate into words. It's not always about constant smiles or obvious flirting either. Sometimes it's in the pauses, the way her attention anchors to you in a crowded room, or how her mood seems to rise just by being in your company. She might try to mask it to keep things neutral, but emotion is stubborn. It seeps through in the way she turns her body toward you, in the subtle lingering of her gaze, in the almost imperceptible delay before she looks away. There's also an emotional openness that emerges. She might share thoughts with you she doesn't share with others, or let you see moments of vulnerability she normally keeps hidden. It's as though your presence creates a safe space where her guard can lower, even if only slightly. She may not fully understand why she feels this comfort, or she may understand perfectly but choose not to voice it. Either way, you've become a point of emotional gravity for her, someone she orbits around without intending to. What's interesting is that this shift isn't something she consciously engineers to impress you. Real affection doesn't need to be staged, it happens naturally. You can't fake the spark in the eyes or the warmth in the voice. You can mimic it for a moment, but sustained emotional energy like this comes from a deeper place, a place of genuine care and attraction. When you notice these shifts, it's worth understanding the courage it takes for someone to allow them to happen. For her, keeping her feelings private might be a matter of timing, circumstances, or fear of how you might respond. Yet despite all that, her feelings leak into the atmosphere whenever you're near. And here's the truth: you can't always control what someone tells you, but you can learn to hear what they're not saying. Sometimes, love speaks in the smallest movements, in the tiniest changes in tone, in the brightness of a moment shared. So, when her presence feels different, lighter, warmer, more alive, know that it's not an accident. It may be her way of telling you, without ever saying it out loud, that you mean more to her than you realize. And if you're wise enough to see it, you'll understand that sometimes the loudest confessions are the ones never spoken. Another sign, perhaps the most subtle yet deeply telling, is when she finds small, seemingly insignificant ways to stay connected to you. This isn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about the quiet consistency of her presence in your life. She may not come right out and say, "I miss you," or "I want to be closer to you." But you'll notice she finds excuses to reach out, to ask questions that don't really require answers, or to share random details about her day. At first glance, it might seem casual, just friendly conversation. But when someone's heart is involved, even the smallest interactions carry weight. A quick message about something that reminded her of you, a shared meme, a comment on something you posted. These are not random acts. They are her way of keeping the thread between you alive, even when circumstances or her own hesitation stop her from openly expressing how she feels. Human connection is sustained not just by the big moments, but by the countless small ones. In psychology, this is often linked to what's called bids for attention. Subtle ways people test the waters to see if you will respond, if you will engage, if you will reciprocate. A woman who secretly loves you but can't tell you outright will often rely on these tiny openings to maintain a sense of closeness without having to risk full vulnerability. It's also in the way she remembers things about you that others overlook. She might recall a story you told weeks ago, or ask about a challenge you mentioned in passing. This shows that she's not just hearing your words, she's storing them, holding on to pieces of you in her mind because they matter to her. That level of attentiveness doesn't happen without a deeper emotional investment. Sometimes, her way of staying connected won't even require words. Maybe she'll simply be present in the spaces you inhabit, showing up at events you're likely to attend, participating in discussions you're part of, or engaging in the same online communities. These are all quiet ways of orbiting your world, ensuring she remains within your line of sight. It's important to note that these actions are often layered with restraint. She's walking the line between wanting you to notice her and fearing she's giving too much away. There's a certain vulnerability in these small connections because they can be dismissed as nothing, but to her, they mean everything. And here's the deeper truth: love, when it cannot be spoken, finds other routes to travel. It will slip into daily interactions, weave itself into conversations, and disguise itself as coincidence. But for the one willing to pay attention, these coincidences form a pattern of care, of thoughtfulness, of presence. So, if you notice her continually weaving herself into the fabric of your days, understand that it may not be by accident. It could be her quiet way of saying, "I want to be in your life," even if she can't yet tell you why. And if you miss that message, you may miss something rare, because some of the greatest love stories begin not with a declaration, but with a whisper.